Today is October 21st. It's the 295th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. At 7:06 on this day in 1978, Flight Service in Melbourne, Australia receives a radio call from the pilot of a Cessna 182L. The pilot, a 20-year-old aspiring commercial pilot named Frederick Valentich, makes contact with air traffic controller Steve Roby. Valentich asks, "Is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet?" To which Roby replies, "No known traffic." Valentich comes back and says, "Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. "What type of aircraft?" Roby asks. Over the next 6 minutes, Valentich describes the most unusual aircraft over the radio. It's large, very large, a long shape with 4 very bright landing lights. It hovers 1,000 feet above him, but then quickly moves away, and then back again at a high rate of speed. Valentich doesn't know what it is, but he tells Roby, "It's not an aircraft." Valentich continues, "It seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It's got a green light and some sort of metallic. It's all shiny on the outside." Valentich is silent for a moment and then continues, "It's just vanished. Would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Is it military?" Then Valentich relays details about his own plane. His engine is idling rough. It's coughing, he says. And then, Melbourne, that strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering. It's not an aircraft." There's silence on the radio for several seconds. Valentich's microphone is open. And then a staccato noise, a sound that some describe as metallic clanging sounds. And then nothing. This is the last known contact from 20-year-old Frederick Valentich. After this, he disappears, never to be seen or heard from again. It's widely believed that Valentich encounters a UFO and is either abducted or disappeared by the alien life forms aboard the massive, shimmering craft that hovers over his Cessna for several minutes. On this day in 1978, Frederick Valentich is the Australian Amelia Earhart. His is one of the most intriguing and baffling aviation disappearances in history. His strange radio call and that he vanishes without a trace, combined with the fact that he is as obsessed with UFOs as he is with flying, all lead to the speculation that he is picked up by a UFO. Valentich is a relatively inexperienced pilot. He's logged 150 hours in the air and is instrument rated to fly at night, but only in visual meteorological conditions, meaning it's dark out but with no heavy cloud cover or inclement weather. He wants to join the Royal Australian Air Force, but he has been rejected twice. He's now studying to obtain a commercial pilot's license, but so far he's failed those exams twice. And he's been cited for flying into restricted airspace and for flying into clouds twice. Valentich is also a total geek when it comes to UFOs. He reads about them, he watches as many films about them as he can, recent releases like Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And he's even seen one before, or so he tells his father. In early 1978, Valentich says he sees a UFO moving very fast away from him. Frederick Valentich departs Moorabbin Airport in Victoria at 6:19 p.m. on this day in 1978. He's heading to King Island to the south. His flight plan takes him along the coastline to Cape Otway and then south across the Bass Strait to King Island, halfway between Victoria and Tasmania. No one knows why he's flying to King Island on this day, or if he even intends to go there after all. When he files his flight plan, he tells officials he's going to pick up friends on the island, which is untrue. He tells others he's going to pick up some crayfish, also untrue. Some think he takes off on this day to stage his own disappearance or even commit suicide. But he's a happy guy, and those who know him believe him to be content with life, despite all the obstacles he encounters trying to pursue his aviation dreams. So why is he flying over Cape Otway in the Bass Strait off the coast of Victoria? Maybe he just wants to log some more hours of flight time. Or perhaps he's up there looking for another UFO. Steve Roby, the air traffic controller, later says Valentich does not sound disoriented when he radios in about the large object hovering above him. In fact, Roby thinks Valentich sounds genuine, that there really is something in the sky, or at least that Valentich believes he sees something this evening. In the days that follow, there will be reports from others who claim to have seen an erratically moving light in the sky. And there's even a photograph that surfaces of a strange object in the sky above Cape Otway. The Air Force conducts a search by sea and air for 4 days, covering 1,000 square miles, but find no trace of the Cessna. 5 years later, in 1983, a cowl flap from a Cessna is found on Flinders Island, washed up on the beach opposite the Flinders Island Airport runway. Flinders Island is just about on the exact opposite side of Australia from the Bass Strait where Valentich disappears. Nonetheless, Royal Australian Navy scientists run models and determine it is possible the piece of metal, which is not buoyant, could have been carried by currents across the ocean floor, carried up and out of the water onto the beach at the end of the runway. That it could have come from Valentich's plane. But the Flinders Island airport manager thinks it's more likely the piece of Cessna flap found on the beach is from 1 or 2 other Cessnas that lost similar parts on takeoff from the Flinders Island airport that same year in 1983. And over the years, a dozen theories or more are suggested to explain the mysterious disappearance of Frederick Valentich on this day in 1978. Most of the theories revolving around UFOs. The most convincing theory, though, is that Valentich becomes disoriented in the air as dusk turns to dark, and that he mistakes Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the bright star Antares, which together form a diamond shape in that particular night sky on this day in 1978, an illusion that he mistakes for a long ship with 4 bright lights. And Valentich is disoriented by the horizon, the last glimmer of daylight disappearing past the curve of the Earth, which creates the illusion of a tilted horizon, which the inexperienced Valentich corrects for by ever so slightly turning the controls of his plane to level the plane, or so he thinks. But what he's really doing when he tells air traffic controller Steve Roby that he's orbiting is ever so slightly turning into a downward spiral known as a graveyard spiral, with ever-increasing acceleration, the tight G-forces of which cause a decrease in fuel flow, which leads to the rough idling of his engine, which he also tells Roby about. And most importantly, Frederick Valentich isn't aware that he is slowly spiraling down to his death on this day in 1978, because he doesn't know he's experiencing spatial disorientation, because he's not watching his gauges, because he's distracted, because he believes he sees a UFO hovering overhead. There are 71 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. Today is International Day of the Nacho, celebrating the invention of the nacho by Ignacio Nacho Anaya in Piedras Negras, Mexico. Ignacio first creates a snack for some tourists, army wives from Fort Duncan across the border. He grabs whatever he has handy at closing time, cuts up tortillas and fries them with some melted cheese and jalapenos, and now I'm hungry. So if you're still listening, help yourself to some nachos especiales. Talk to you mañana.